Hey everyone, welcome back to another old laptop review. In this video, we're going to look at the HP ProBook 6570B. And we're going to look at the aesthetics, the build quality, and maybe a little bit of the performance of this laptop in 2018, early 2019. So the HP ProBook 6570B is essentially the cheaper version of the 8570P EliteBook. So we're gonna look at some of the differences between the two laptops in this video. Actually, I did a video just a few weeks ago on the 8570P, so you can take a look at that as well. But so what are some of the major differences? So we'll get into that now. Well, one of the major differences is the screen. So the screen on the ProBook, I think is a standard, it's a 1366 by 768 screen. So on the EliteBook that I had, it was a 1600 by 900 screen. So the resolution is going to be higher on the EliteBook. And related to the display, the EliteBook 8570P came with a Radeon HD 7670 graphics card. This is a discrete card, so it doesn't rely on the Intel HD integrated graphics. Another difference, I think, is the keyboard. So the EliteBook's keyboard is backlit, if I remember correctly, but this is definitely not backlit. The other difference is that the EliteBook has a metal chassis, and this one has kind of a it's a plastic that looks like it's aluminum, but it really is a plastic shell. But it's a tough shell, so it's not unstable in any way. So you'll see very little flex on this laptop. I also just did a video on the 6475B, which is an AMD version of the ProBook. That is also like a 14-inch laptop. So the way you can tell it's an Intel version is that there is A0 at the end of the model number. So 5 at the end indicates it's AMD and 0 indicates Intel. So the Intel CPUs around this time were better than the AMD CPUs of the same generation. So around 2013, I believe, something like that. So if you wanted to do something more computationally intensive, then the Intel versions of the laptop in this generation are going to be better. One of the things that I've said repeatedly about the HPs in my old laptop reviews is that even though these laptops are around 5 years old, the aesthetics of these laptops, these HP EliteBooks and ProBooks, still really hold up really well. So some of the laptops around this age had the traditional keyboards. This has a chiclet keyboard that looks a little bit more modern. It has kind of like the dark keyboard and then slightly lighter colored palm rest area and lid. So that does make it look a little bit, quite a bit more attractive. The slightly rounded edges also much more modern looking than some of the Dell Latitudes that came out around this time, and definitely a lot more modern looking than the ThinkPads that came out around this time, like the T430 series, which really looks kind of old. Now, taking a look at the top of the laptop, you got this really nice shiny HP logo, and then you have the gray plastic metal looking finish, but it is plastic. So it's also just a really attractive design. And I mentioned before, the only thing that really gives it away is its thickness. So modern business laptops are typically not so thick. And it doesn't have most business laptops right now don't have a DVD drive. So those are the things that kind of keep this this laptop kind of slightly older looking. So one of the great things about the HP 15-inch ProBook and EliteBooks of this generation is the fact that you can open up the bottom case without any screws at all. So you see this latch on the right side. All you need to do is pull it to the right, and you can open up this bottom panel here, and that will give you access to do things like RAM changes to the RAM, cleaning out the fan, cleaning out anything that you need to do here. Certainly, if you need to change the hard drive, you might need to have screws, depending on if you have a caddy or not. But there's a lot of things you can just do just by pulling out the panel. It also looks like what you can do here is to take off this screw, And yeah, it looks like what you can do here is to take off this screw here, and then you can pull out the DVD drive and then put in a caddy, a hard drive caddy if you want to. This is probably going to be like a 12.5-inch caddy if you want to use one. So that's an option if you want to just get rid of the DVD drive and have extra storage. For this model, it's carrying a Core i5-3320M CPU running at 2.6 gigahertz. So this is a dual-core processor with hyperthreading. So it acts like a quad-core processor in some ways. The EliteBook that I had a 3360M CPU, which is a little bit faster. But anyways, I looked at the performance benchmarks of the 3320M CPU, and it's about the same as an i5-6200U ultra-low voltage CPU from the 6th generation. So it's actually quite good. So this will use more power than the Skylake processor that I just mentioned, the 6200U, but the overall, if it's plugged into battery, the overall performance is going to be about the same. So based on that comparison, I can probably tell you that the 3320M CPU is going to hold up really well for basic computing, daily computing, such as office work, web browsing, YouTube watching, movies, things like that. So for typical tasks, this will have zero problems. This can also probably do some light video editing. So for example, right now I edit my videos on an i5-7200U CPU, which is not that much faster than the 3320M or the 6200U CPU. So this can just do some light video editing as well. The display on the ProBook is also quite decent. If you don't mind a 720p display, then this will be a fine choice. I believe the viewing angles are decent. It's not an IPS screen, but the viewing angles are okay. You definitely get some washed out colors when you go up and down. But overall, for a TN panel, it's fine. So we're using Edge right now to test web browsing, and the scroll speed is fine, so as expected. The keyboard feels really solid. Nothing wrong with it. Lots of travel, good clicky responses, both tactile and an audible response to your key presses. So the keyboard is quite fine. So here's a capture from the camera, built-in webcam. It's okay. It's not as bad as some of the other cameras that I've seen in the past, and captures probably, it looks like around 20 frames per second. But the colors are not so good. That's kind of typical of business laptops, so nothing to really complain about. If I could point out two weaknesses of this laptop, maybe it's the weight. But it is a 15-inch laptop, and it weighs about the same as the EliteBook version. So it's not really a big complaint, but if you're lugging it around for school, like, you probably don't want to do this for hours at a time. The other complaint that I have is that Windows updates doesn't download the hotkey support for HP, so you have to go to HP's website and download it automatically. So this is something that maybe more novice users may not be able to do right off the bat, but it's quite easy to do if you just Google search it. So the hotkeys, meaning like the function buttons that change the brightness level of the screen and things like that. So those buttons don't work off the bat with a Windows install. Guys, that is it for this review, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below, and I will see you next time for another old laptop review.